When it comes to Star Wars villains, Count Dooku doesn't often get the recognition he deserves, or the complexity his story demands. He's usually lumped in as a placeholder Sith Lord, someone standing between Darth Maul and Darth Vader, a dignified man with a cool, curved lightsaber, but no real depth. But that take, it doesn't do him justice. Count Dooku wasn't just another pawn in Palpatine's game, nor was he a power-hungry maniac drunk on the dark side. He was a man of conviction, a former Jedi Master who turned away from the Order and the Republic not because he was evil, but because he was tired of their hypocrisy, corruption, and outright failure to live up to their ideals. In many ways, his journey is less about a descent into darkness, and about someone trying to rewrite the rules of a broken galaxy. Think about it, Dooku walked away from the Jedi Order after decades of loyal service. Not because he wanted power, but because he realized the Jedi had become pawns of a corrupt system. He saw the Republic for what it was, a bloated, bureaucratic mess, incapable of solving the galaxy's real problems. And when the Jedi failed to challenge that system, Dooku decided to challenge it himself. Sure, his methods became questionable as he aligned with Darth Sidious, but his critiques of the galaxy's biggest institutions, they were spot on. In fact, they were so accurate, it's a wonder more people didn't join his side. But Dooku isn't just a tragic figure. He's also deeply misunderstood. The Jedi Council painted him as a power-hungry rogue. The Republic called him a traitor, and history has remembered him as a villain. Yet when you look closer, it's clear that his motivations were rooted in a desire for justice and reform. He wanted to fix the galaxy, not burn it to the ground. His story raises an uncomfortable question. Was Count Dooku truly a villain? Or was he simply a man trying to do the right thing in a galaxy that didn't want to change? In this video, we're going to explore why Count Dooku wasn't wrong. We'll break down his frustrations with the Jedi Order, the repeated betrayals he suffered at the hands of the Council, his alliance with the Sith, which was far more nuanced than people think, and why his critiques of the Republic were entirely valid. By the end of this discussion, you might find yourself seeing Dooku in a whole new light. Not as a Sith Lord or a villain, but as a tragic anti-hero who dared to question a galaxy that refused to listen. Before we jump in, only 2% of you watching right now are subscribed. That means most of you are enjoying the content without being part of the community yet. If you're loving what you see and don't want to miss out, why not hit that subscribe button? It's completely free, takes just a second, and helps the channel grow, so I can keep bringing you more of the content you love. Now, let's continue this video. Count Dooku's decision to leave the Jedi Order wasn't just a dramatic gesture. It was the culmination of years of watching an institution lose its way. The Jedi were supposed to be the guardians of peace and justice, but by Dooku's time, they had become lapdogs for a crumbling republic. They weren't independent thinkers anymore. They were enforcers, blindly following orders from a Senate so corrupt it couldn't even pass meaningful legislation. Dooku, ever the idealist, realized that the Jedi were no longer serving the will of the Force. Instead, they were serving a political system riddled with greed and inefficiency. And let's talk about the Jedi Code. It's easy to romanticize their philosophy, but when you break it down, the code is as rigid as it is hypocritical. No attachments, no emotions, no ambition, basically, no humanity. The Jedi expected their members to suppress natural feelings and desires, while simultaneously throwing them into high-stakes situations, where emotional control was impossible. Dooku saw the hypocrisy in this. How could the Jedi claim to be paragons of wisdom and balance, when they refused to acknowledge the very emotions that made them sentient beings? Dooku also recognized that the Jedi had lost their moral compass. They claimed to be neutral arbiters of peace, but they were deeply entangled in galactic politics. Instead of mediating conflicts, they were taking sides. Instead of seeking balance, they were tipping the scales in favor of a corrupt system. Dooku wasn't content to sit in council chambers, meditating on problems he had no power to solve. He wanted action. He wanted change. And when the Jedi refused to listen, he realized he had no choice but to walk away. What makes Dooku's departure even more poignant is the way the Jedi reacted, or rather, how they didn't react. They didn't try to convince him to stay, or even acknowledge his grievances. Instead, they let him leave without a second thought, as if decades of service and sacrifice meant nothing. It wasn't just a betrayal of Dooku, it was a betrayal of their own ideals. The Jedi Order didn't lose Dooku because he was corrupt or power-hungry. They lost him because they refused to listen to the truth. Let's not sugarcoat this. The Jedi Council treated Dooku like yesterday's leftovers. After he left the Order, they wasted no time replacing him on the Council with Mace Windu. And why? Because Mace snitched on him for questioning the Council's decisions. Imagine dedicating your entire life to an organization, only to have your legacy erased, and your seat handed to the guy who ratted you out. It's not just disrespectful, it's outright betrayal. And this wasn't a one-time thing. The Jedi Council consistently undermined Dooku, both during his time in the Order and after he left. While he was still a Jedi, Dooku frequently challenged the Council's decisions, pointing out their hypocrisy and their blind allegiance to the Republic. Instead of engaging with his critiques, they dismissed him as arrogant and headstrong. This wasn't just petty politics, it was a complete disregard for someone who had dedicated his life to their cause. Even after Dooku left, the Council couldn't resist dragging his name through the mud. They painted him as a power-hungry traitor who abandoned the Order out of selfishness. Never mind the fact that he had legitimate concerns about the Jedi's role in galactic politics. Never mind that he was one of the only Jedi willing to call out the corruption in the Republic. The Council didn't just betray Dooku, they betrayed the truth. What's even more infuriating is that the Council didn't seem to learn anything from losing Dooku. They continued to double down on their mistakes, ignoring dissenting voices and refusing to adapt to the galaxy's changing needs. Dooku wasn't wrong to feel betrayed. He was one of the few Jedi who could see the cracks in the Foundation, and instead of listening, the Council pushed him away. Their treatment of him wasn't just a betrayal of Dooku, it was a betrayal of the Order's mission. Joining the Sith might seem like an unforgivable act, but let's be clear, Dooku wasn't a Sith in the traditional sense. He wasn't some maniac obsessed with power and destruction. He wasn't out there torturing people for fun, or cackling while lightning shot out of his fingers. No, Dooku's alliance with the Sith was more pragmatic than ideological. He saw the Sith as a means to an end, a way to achieve the galactic reform the Jedi and the Republic had failed to deliver. Dooku's motivations were complex. He didn't embrace the Sith code or revel in the dark side. Instead, he used Sith teachings as a tool to challenge the status quo. He wasn't interested in ruling the galaxy with an iron fist. He wanted to reshape it into something better. And let's not forget that Dooku spent much of his time trying to recruit people to his cause. When he approached Obi-Wan Kenobi in Attack of the Clones, he wasn't offering the typical Sith pitch. He was offering a vision of a galaxy free from corruption and decay. What makes Dooku's story so tragic is that he truly believed he could control the Sith. He thought he could use Palpatine's power to achieve his vision without losing himself in the process. But as we all know, Palpatine isn't the type to share power. Dooku was playing a dangerous game, and by the time he realized he was a pawn, it was too late. His death at the hands of Anakin Skywalker wasn't just a personal tragedy. It was the final proof that even someone as brilliant and principled as Dooku could be outmaneuvered by the galaxy's ultimate schemer. In many ways, Dooku's alliance with the Sith was a desperate act by a man who had run out of options. He wasn't wrong to seek change, and he wasn't wrong to recognize the flaws in the Jedi and the Republic. His mistake was thinking he could outsmart Palpatine, a mistake that cost him everything. But was he evil? Not really. He was a man caught between two flawed systems, trying to find a way to fix a broken galaxy. He wasn't wrong about the Republic being rotten. One of Dooku's greatest frustrations, and the reason he ultimately turned his back on both the Jedi and the Republic, was the undeniable corruption of the Galactic Republic. And let's be honest, he wasn't wrong. By the time Dooku left the Jedi Order, the Republic was little more than a playground for greedy politicians, self-serving bureaucrats, and corporate interests. The Senate, which was supposed to represent the people, had devolved into a circus of infighting and lobbying, where the loudest voices belonged to those with the deepest pockets. Dooku saw this for what it was, a system in decay, unable to address the needs of the galaxy it claimed to govern. What made this even worse was the Republic's hypocrisy. It branded itself as a beacon of democracy and fairness. Yet entire star systems were left to fend for themselves, while the wealthiest core worlds hoarded resources and influence. The Trade Federation and other megacorporations were given immense power, controlling trade routes and even militarizing their fleets, all while the Senate turned a blind eye. How could a system like this possibly endure? Dooku, ever the idealist, recognized the inevitable. The Republic wasn't just flawed, it was beyond saving. And where were the Jedi in all of this? Sitting in their ivory tower, meditating on the will of the Force, while carrying out the Senate's dirty work. The Jedi weren't just complicit in the Republic's failures, they were active participants. Instead of challenging the corruption, they aligned themselves with it, serving as enforcers for a broken system. This was a betrayal of everything the Jedi were supposed to stand for. Dooku couldn't stomach it. How could he call himself a Jedi, a guardian of peace and justice, when the very institution he served was perpetuating injustice on a galactic scale? What makes Dooku's stance so compelling is how prescient it was. He saw what others refused to see. The Republic wasn't just collapsing under its own weight, it was being dismantled from within. Palpatine's rise to power wasn't some sudden coup, it was the natural outcome of a system that had already lost its moral compass. Dooku understood this long before the Clone Wars began. His decision to leave wasn't an act of treachery. It was a refusal to be complicit in the Republic's inevitable downfall. In many ways, Dooku's story is less about a man turning to the dark side, and more about a man trying to find a way to fix a galaxy that everyone else had given up on. Count Dooku's story isn't just one of betrayal and downfall. It's a tragic reflection of what happens when idealism collides with a galaxy that thrives on corruption, complacency, and hypocrisy. Dooku wasn't perfect, far from it. He made mistakes, trusted the wrong people, and ultimately fell victim to the Sith. But his core motivations, his vision for a better galaxy, those were grounded in truth and clarity. He wasn't wrong to see the Jedi Order as a hollowed-out institution, clinging to outdated traditions and blindly serving a corrupt republic. He wasn't wrong to call out the Senate for its greed and inefficiency, nor was he wrong to believe that real reform required drastic action. In fact, his critiques were so valid that they still echo with some of the sharpest insights in the Star Wars universe. What makes Dooku's story so compelling is its nuance. He wasn't a one-dimensional Sith Lord seeking ultimate power for its own sake. He was a man who believed in justice, balance, and reform, principles he held onto, even as he strayed into darker territory. His decision to align with Sidious wasn't born of a thirst for domination, but out of desperation. He saw no other way to challenge the Republic and bring about the change the galaxy desperately needed. Yet, in the end, he became a pawn in the very system he sought to overthrow. That's the tragedy of Count Dooku. He believed he could control the dark side, that he could use it as a tool without being consumed by it. But as we know, the dark side doesn't compromise, it devours. And yet, Dooku's legacy is worth revisiting, not as a tale of villainy, but as a cautionary tale. He was one of the few who saw the galaxy's problems with absolute clarity. He understood the cracks in the Republic, the flaws in the Jedi, and the danger of blind loyalty to broken institutions. If anything, Dooku's story forces us to reconsider who the real villains of the Star Wars galaxy were. Was it the man who dared to leave the Jedi Order, who tried to challenge the system? Or was it the Order and the Republic, whose refusal to change ultimately allowed Palpatine to seize power? So, the next time you watch Attack of the Clones or the Clone Wars, take a moment to see Dooku in a different light. He wasn't just a Sith with a curved lightsaber. He was a man of principle, caught in a galaxy that didn't deserve him. His tragedy lies not in his fall to darkness, but in the galaxy's refusal to listen to the truths he tried to tell. Maybe Count Dooku wasn't wrong. Maybe the galaxy just wasn't ready for him. Thank you for watching and supporting the channel. If you're enjoying the content and want to see more, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to stay updated on future uploads. Your support means the world to me. And if you'd like to go the extra mile, you can use the Super Thanks feature to help keep the channel going strong. Every contribution, no matter how small, helps me create better content for you. Thanks for being part of this amazing community.